In today's video, we will continue our study on sorcery, examining the role that it plays in the last days. In the part 1 video of this study, we defined the meaning of the word sorcery, identified the source and purpose of sorcery, and looked at Old Testament illustrations of sorcery during the time period prior to the Babylonian captivity. In this video, we will examine and recognize sorcery in our present time, specifically focusing on the questions: what is the intent of sorcery today, and what does sorcery look like today? A lot of times when we think about sorcery, we tend to think about the sorcerer who is practicing the sorcery. But with sorcery, you have two sides. On one side, you have the entity that is using the sorcery, and on the other side, you have the entity that is the object of the sorcery, or the one on whom the magic is placed or used. To be under the influence of sorcery is said to be under a spell or enchantment. In this video, I will refer to the person or people under the influence of sorcery as being under a spell. Revelation 18:23 tells us that Babylon has placed a spell on the whole world. It states, "And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived." Babylon has used sorcery to deceive the entire world. This scripture tells us that the purpose of this sorcery is to deceive. To deceive means to lead astray, to lead away from the truth, and to lead into error and sin. So then the people that are under the spell of Babylon are being led into error and sin. Babylon's purpose then is to lead the whole world away from the truth and into sin. This is Babylon's purpose and the role that she plays. The book of Revelation tells us that this mystery Babylon sits upon the beast. There is a lot that can be said about Babylon, but the focus of this video is to understand the sorcery that Babylon uses. When we think of sorcery, certain images come to mind. Due to pop culture, when we think of sorcery, we often think of an individual with a hat whirling around a magic wand or some type of staff. But to gain understanding, we have to get rid of the fairy tale images and look at the meaning of these words to gain knowledge. A sorcerer is said to be one that practices magic. One of the meanings of the word magic is the art of producing a desired effect or result through the use of incantation or various other techniques that presumably assure human control of supernatural agencies or the forces of nature. By definition, the whole premise of magic is illogical. To think that as humans in the natural realm that we have the power to control supernatural spiritual beings is a pride-filled notion. To think that these beings would even allow us to control them is a deception in itself. But let's get back to the topic at hand. The purpose of magic is to produce a desired effect through the use of incantation. And incantation is another word for spell. The purpose of a spell is to have influence over a person in order to produce a desired effect. Things that influence you impact your actions, behaviors, and opinions. And of course, we have both positive and negative influences in our lives, but in the case of sorcery, the influence will be negative. Babylon, personified as a woman, sits upon the beast, and the beast is controlled by the dragon or Satan. So the actions, behaviors, and opinions of those that are under the spell of Babylon are controlled by Satan. Ephesians 2:1-3 confirms this and states, "And you hath he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins, wherein in time past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, among whom also we all had our conversation in times past, in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature the children of wrath, even as others." This scripture confirms that the prince of the power of the air, or Satan, is the force that is at work in the children of disobedience. They are disobedient because their actions, behaviors, and opinions are under the influence of Satan, and it is through his influence that they disobey God. The whole intent of sorcery and magic is to influence a person's thoughts, actions, and behaviors. Let's examine how this influence comes into our lives. Revelation 18:3 states, "For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies." The word fornication means idolatry, which is the worship of idols or false gods. In the part 1 video, I stated that idolatry is at the heart of sorcery. Satan has always desired that we should worship him. Worship does not necessarily involve adoration. The heart of worship is obedience and compliance. If you have not already done so, I would encourage you to watch the video that I posted entitled, "What Does It Mean to Worship the Beast?" In this video, I explain the meaning of worship. I will place a link to the video in the description box. God warned the Israelites about idolatry in Deuteronomy 11:16, which states, "Take heed to yourselves, that your heart be not deceived, and ye turn aside and serve other gods and worship them." Here again, we see that it is through deception that people turn aside to serve and worship other gods. In the present time, most of us would think that we are too smart and intelligent to serve and worship idols and false gods. However, the book of Revelation states the contrary. Through the prophecy of this book, we learn that the whole world, with the exception of those whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, will worship idols. The majority won't even realize that they are under a spell and are deceived. This is why the prophecy has been given to us, so that we will not be deceived. In Matthew 24:24, Jesus tells us that the deception will be so great that if it were possible, even his elect would be deceived. Additionally, we have to remember that because the people have rejected the truth, God allows a strong delusion to come over the people so that they will believe the lies of Satan. With this in mind, and understanding that the intent of sorcery and magic is to influence a person's thoughts, actions, and behaviors, we need to examine how this influence comes into our lives. The most obvious mechanism of influence is through the use of mass communication. Mass communication is the process of imparting and exchanging information through mass media to large segments of the population. Through our technology, information can be distributed to the masses instantly. With sorcery, the information that is distributed to the masses is designed to impact and control people's thoughts, actions, and behaviors. The influence will, of course, depend on who is communicating the message and the audience that is the recipient of the message. Mass communication today is distributed primarily through digital and broadcast media. Digital media includes social media, video platforms, websites, mobile apps, podcasts, online radio, and ebooks. Broadcast media includes television, films, and radio. There's also print media, which includes newspapers, magazines, books, novels, journals, publications, comics, etc. Messages are sent to us through mass communication. So, what is the message that is being sent and how does it influence us? Of course, the answers are found in Scripture. Going back to Ephesians 2:1-3, we see that the course of this world, meaning the ways of the present world, are in accordance with the prince of the power of the air, or Satan. 1 John 2:15-17 describes to us the ways of our present world, and it states, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever." The Scripture tells us that when we love the world, the love of God is not in us. This is because the ways of the world are in accordance with Satan. Verse 16 tells us that the world centers around the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. These are the things that are in the world and are of Satan. So then, the sorcery that Babylon uses is to influence us to act in accordance with the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And these are the messages that are sent to us through mass communication. It is communicated to us that these things are to be desired, pursued, envied, and obtained. There will be a part 3 and possibly even a part 4 to this video series because the Scripture has a lot to say about sorcery, but I do not want this video to be too long. I will conclude this video with the Scripture from Revelation 18:4, in which the Lord encourages His people to come out of Babylon, and it states, "And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues."